vengeance. I am the Knight. I am Batman!
The year is 2009. Obama's president. Bitcoin has just been created, and a few years earlier, The Dark Knight captivated audiences with a high-tech, modern Batman. The popular Batman is more popular than ever. It is inevitable that a slew of video games will be released to capitalize on the cultural impact of the films. While following the middling reviews of the Batman Begins tie-in video game, The Dark Knight never actually got its own video game tie-in. Instead, we received Lego Batman. And while it is a charming video game I myself have fond memories of, it really doesn't scratch that itch of being a detective, wielding high-tech gadgets, or living in the dark, dread-filled city that Gotham is typically depicted as. But that all changed with the release of Batman Arkham Asylum, a game developed by Rocksteady in part due to the flop of the Batman Begins tie-in video game, and Warner Brothers looking for a new studio to use the Batman rights with. And this video will be a retrospective and critique of the Batman Arkham Asylum games that promised to really make you feel like you're trapped on Arkham Island. Spoiler alert for any games in the Arkham series. The game opens on a rainy night, the bat symbol illuminating the darkened sky. Seems that the Joker took the mayor hostage, and Batman swooped in and apprehended the mad clown and is on his way to Arkham Asylum. Batman leads him into the asylum, and the warden and guards greet them as they enter the facility. They strap him into a standing gurney to haul him away, but something doesn't sit right with Batman, so he decides he needs to accompany them into the asylum. In just a little over 2 minutes, the tone, time period, and the main villain have all been established. We aren't dealing with a family-friendly, colorful time of the Lego game. No, we're dealing with a dark, ominous tone in the asylum as communicated by the atmosphere. Joker's been in the asylum before, and the guards are used to the Dark Knight, so this is a Batman with a year or two at least under his utility belt. And the most obvious point is that the Joker is going to be the main baddie, and he is definitely up to something. We just don't know what yet. Once we're given control, we have a slow intro walking through the asylum. And while I usually despise moments of just pushing the left stick forward as a character spouts information at me, this game does it right. The characters have purposeful animations, using expressive motions to match what they're saying.
Need to take my temperature? I'd be happy to drop my pants.
The characters aren't just walking and opening and closing their mouths, like in many other games before and after Arkham Asylum. Looking at you, Assassin's Creed. It also gives us time to soak in the aura of the asylum, its foreboding, harsh nature washing over us. This section even introduces us to Killer Croc, foreshadowing that we likely won't just be dealing with the Joker from Batman's Rogues Gallery. But most importantly, the dialogue makes this section the most enjoyable, with highlights being the performance from Kevin Conroy as Batman and Mark Hamill as Joker.
Whee! Great night for a party!
Not where you're going.
The night is young, Bats.
Who Kid Me was all too familiar with from the Batman the Animated Series. Their performances really make you feel like you're watching an evolution of the animated Joker and Batman in this game. And finally, this walking section gives the player time to be a bit on edge. You and I both know the Joker is going to escape, but how and when? We better keep an eye on this funny guy as we go, just to be safe, especially once we hear further on that a fire broke out in Blackgate Prison, leading to most of the prisoners there being transported to the asylum, many of them being Joker's own henchmen. Joker doesn't even try to hide the fact that this is no coincidence.
I mean, don't you think it's a little bit funny how a fire at Blackgate caused hundreds of my crew to be moved here?
And then, suddenly, in the elevator, the lights go out. This is it. This is when the Joker makes his move. Only for the lights to turn back on with Batman gripping Joker's throat. And knowing this sick freak, the madman's probably enjoying it too. Arkham's Batman is calculating, deductive, and forward-thinking. If the player is expecting a breakout any moment, then of course so is Batman. No escape attempt will work so easily while Batman is literally within arm's reach of Joker, and he knows this too. We make it to the holding cells, meeting up with the best boy, Commissioner Gordon, and we are then stopped by the literal worst guard. He won't let us in just because we might rile up the inmates. I'm the gosh darn Batman, and that's the Joker. You let me through. Everything that happens is on your head, buddy. As we transport Mr. J, we get a glimpse of Officer Bowles drinking on the job. Geez, man, wonder what's gotten him so stressed out. It's probably nothing. The Joker then obviously escapes, choking out the worst guard, thus forcing the Doctor to uncuff him in an attempt to free the guard. He got off lucky, I say. Oh, wait, no, he's dead. Never mind. Batman bursts into the room, just missing Joker, and boom, right into combat. So now I think I need to come clean. This section right here was my first ever experience with Batman Arkham Asylum. And I know what you're thinking. Of course it is. It's the first combat section. No, I mean, the first time I played this game, it was on this screen. No intro, no build-up, just this. Because it was on a playable stand in Best Buy, back when stores actually had playable demos that kids could play while parents are shopping. I played the heck out of it, beating up baddies left and right, only for my parents not to get it for me because it looked a little bit too violent. They then a few months later got me Assassin's Creed 2. Go figure. Guess the word assassin in the title didn't tip them off to how violent it would be. Parents are weird. Anyways, I missed the boat on experiencing this game at launch, only to play it years later. But my god, does this combat system still hold up. On paper, it seems simple and a bit boring. Oh, all you do is mash X to hit and Y to counter? That must get old fast. But it doesn't. And that is in no small part to the sound and movements. Every punch and kick sounds powerful when it lands. And when successfully countering, the movements to block are so sudden yet smooth. It really makes you feel like you're fighting a bunch of goons with the skills of a martial arts master with just 2 buttons. I might even go so far as to say it feels kinda like doing a rhythm game, but without the music, if that makes any sense. This combat would be influential. I'd wager you've probably played a game that uses a combat style similar to it. Be it Shadows of War, Spider-Man, or Assassin's Creed, go figure. And while it does seem a bit simple on the surface, there's a bit more to it than meets the eye. Batman's attacks have weight, and if you attack an enemy already moving to strike, you run the risk of them beating you to the punch, literally. Or if you launch a counter preemptively, you leave yourself open to an attack. So no spamming that counter button, folks. Something lost in the early part of Shadow of War's combat. I am literally just spamming X and Y and winning this fight. Love the game, but come on now. While hand-to-hand combat is one side of Batman's skills in a brawl, it's not everything. There's also the toys, his Gat Badgets. His Gat Badgets? His Bat Gadgets. We will get into them individually later on, but I want to mention them in combat now. You can use batarangs, explosive putty, and a grappling hook throughout the combat encounters. However, it never really feels like they are necessary or even advantageous to use in a combat role, except for the use of the Bat Claw to disarm enemies with a stun baton. Throughout my multiple playthroughs, I always knew I had more options on hand, but the fun yet simplistic combat never made it necessary to utilize all the options at my disposal, especially once the knockout upgrades are acquired, because by that point, Batman is able to permanently take out an enemy every few punches and kicks. And while the combat is a whole lot of fun, this is still a bit disappointing. When I think of Batman fighting, I think of smoke screens and batarangs flying, electric shocks paralyzing foes, and bolos tripping up the enemies. But here, Batman doesn't need that, nor have enough toys at his disposal to make this ideal Batman combat a reality. This ideal is something better achieved in Rocksteady's following Batman games, so it's likely this more limited combat was due to dev time. But in this game, while the Bat Gadgets are useful outside of fights, or even for initiating ones with a cheeky batarang, the most effective strategy is still to let your fists do the talking. And boy, can they talk. I mean, look at how far you can reach a bad guy with a kick or a punch. It really makes you feel like a kickboxing ballerina. For a guy with muscles on muscles, he sure is a springy fellow, isn't he? I love the combat, but I'd expect this sort of reach from Spider-Man, but not Batman. To close the distance, I'd imagine Batman pulling foes in close and doing backflips away and rolling, but not zipping 30 feet through the air to land a critical blow. Are we sure these muscles aren't inflated with helium, like in that one SpongeBob episode? This isn't a huge issue, as it only happens when combatants are spread far apart, while in bunches, the combat is smooth and powerful. And these criminals got a first-hand taste of how powerful it was. With the combat tutorial out of the way, we turn to hunting down the Joker. All the while, we hear alerts that sections all over the asylum have inmates being released. One of those being Victor Zsasz.
I see anything that looks even a little bit like a bat, and this guard dies. Do you hear me?
All of Batman's villains reflect some aspect of Batman himself. Joker is his fear of losing control. Scarecrow is his worry of losing himself to fear. And Croc is, well, I don't know what Croc is, but probably something. Maybe his shame for buying crocodile skin boots one time. And Victor Zsasz is a reflection of Batman's fears of succumbing to hopelessness. Zsasz, like Bruce Wayne, was a rich boy who lost his parents. By the way, Bruce Wayne is Batman. Shocker, I know. While Zsasz lost them when he was in his 20s, the loss sent him into a deep depression, and he gambled away his fortune and was left with nothing. After killing a homeless man that tried to mug him with a knife when he attempted to jump from Gotham Bridge, he decided that his life's work would be to save others from the pointlessness of life, etching a tally mark in his skin for each life he saves. Perhaps if Bruce Wayne didn't climb his way out of his own depression when he was younger, he too could have fallen as Zsasz did. Batman's own life has been filled with hardships, darkness, and loss, so he knows all too well how tempting it is just to give up on seeing any point in living. Batman could have gone down many roads after the loss of his parents, many of them mirroring the paths Zsasz and other villains have walked. And while becoming Batman may not have been the healthiest of the possible choices, it's at least one driven by hope. The hope that life really is worth living and saving. And that guard that's held hostage is one such life needing to be saved. Using the gargoyles as a stealthy way to get close without being seen, we take down Victor Zsasz. And I gotta say, I love these gargoyles. They are thematic, seamlessly integrated into the gameplay, and a subtle communication to the age of the asylum, and that it has just been built over with improvements over decades. I'll have more to say on the asylum later on though. With Zsasz out of the way, we get introduced to Mr. J's girlfriend, Harley Quinn.
Can you hear me? Is this thing on? Oh, hiya, B-Man. Harley Quinn here. How do you like my new uniform?
And while I may have missed the boat on this game on release, I did not miss all of the cosplay of this outfit back then. Looking at you, Jessica Negri. She is killing it in that nurse's outfit. But I gotta say, the pigtails just never do it for me. They fit her character as a replacement for the Harley Quinn outfit that she had back in the animated series. And Arlene Sorkin is back from the show to lend her voice to the character. Just another thread, making this feel like a game made for Batman fans through and through. She's kidnapped the warden, tied him down, and gagged him, the lucky dog. And Batman will have to add saving him to the list. Throughout this whole game, he's going to be saving people. Guards, inmates, Gordon, the warden. This isn't just a Batman that will beat up the bad guys to save the day. He's a hero. And that goes beyond just punching the daylights out of thugs. Rocksteady was given the assignment to make a Batman game, and they understood that assignment thoroughly. Batman is many things rolled into one, and in an interview back when the game launched with the game's director, Sefton Hill, he makes it clear they wanted to capture as many of these sides to Batman as possible. He's quoted as saying, "One thing about Batman is that he has many sides to his character. Sometimes it's perhaps easier to focus on some of those facets and miss out on some of the other things that really make him who he is. If you focus on the brawling elements, then you miss out on some of the detective elements, or some of the other sides of his character." A wonderful quote. Batman is a brawler, but he doesn't kill. He's got gadgets for every occasion, but his greatest weapon is still his mind. He is the world's greatest detective after all. He's vengeance, but he still wants justice served and the villains to get the treatment that they need. And I think that Rocksteady knocked all of these aspects out of the park for their first game. Mostly. The justice part of his character and his empathy for the villain's mental state gets devoured in the darkness of the asylum. But I promise we will get to that aspect a bit later on after having delved deeper into this madhouse.
Don't make promises you can't keep, Bats.
Having saved a few people, we finally make it to the Joker. Ever the showman, Joker perches himself on a hanging isolation chamber, ready to release his new monstrosity, which we make short work of before it dies of a heart attack. Disappointed with this sudden end to his first experiment, he livens it up with a dare to the Dark Knight. Strike him down. End this whole crazy adventure before it gets any worse. End the Joker. No matter what Batman chooses, the Joker wins in some way. But of course, Batman refuses. Batman doesn't kill. And so the night grows ever longer. I want to take a minute to talk about the Joker, because if I asked you who the Joker was, I'm sure you'd have an answer ready for me in a second. It's an easy question to answer, but everyone will have a slightly different one. The Joker has been around for almost 90 years now, and with that comes a lot of interpretations. Is he a comedian, where everything is themed around the circus and laughs? Is he a crime boss that wants to send a message to the world and tear down anyone in his way? Or is he a murderous psychopath that takes enjoyment from the most cruel ways of ending as many lives as he can? Or any other mix you can think of. In this game, Arkham Asylum focuses on 4 main aspects for their Joker. He's insane, but highly intelligent and forward-thinking. We find out he's been planning this night for months later on, and the spectacle of this stage is no small feat. And it is a spectacle because aspect number 2 is his showmanship. It's not enough that he wins. He needs the Bat to see everything come falling down, and even break Batman in the end, both body and spirit. And by the end of the game, he literally has the final battle broadcasted to all of Gotham, waving to the camera as it all goes down. Aspect number 3 is his ruthlessness. He doesn't just kill, he destroys innocents with laughing gas, threatens everyone around him, and experiments on his own henchmen. He doesn't care for any human life, even his girl Harley. Sorry, Quinn, he's only got eyes for one person, and that is the Bat. Because the final aspect is his obsession with the Batman. This whole night isn't just to sow chaos and death. No, it's a party, a jamboree, a celebration, and the main guest of honor is Batman. It's not enough to bring Gotham to its knees if Batman isn't there to try and hopefully fail in stopping it. These are what make this Joker the Arkham's Joker. And I love it. It's exactly how I'd expect the evolution of the clown from the animated series to evolve for an older audience. It's a shame he can't stick around longer, but he's got a party to prepare for. But don't worry, he's prepared a little distraction to keep us engaged while he's gone. Turns out Officer Bowles is on the Joker's payroll, and he takes Commissioner Gordon hostage. Officer Bowles is just the first piece of corruption infesting the halls of the asylum that spring up like weeds, and we need to do some pruning. And so we make our way to their last known location because Batman will need to investigate the area for clues to track down the Commissioner.
I should go back to the holding cells. Bowles wasn't too smart.
Introducing the Detective Vision, Batman's way of looking for forensic evidence in a crime scene. It really makes you feel like the world's greatest detective. You never know when you may need to investigate an area for traces of alcohol, tobacco, blood, or fingerprints. It's an interesting mechanic that in-universe guides the player to their next objective, without a big arrow saying, "Go here!" I mean, they do that later on, but that's also in-universe. It just happens to be a big arrow. The level of detail in this one gadget is incredible. It can read out heart rates, display alcohol content or tobacco brands, and visualize the chemical structure of molecules in the air. All of these bells and whistles, while not useful to the player in finding their target when using the detective vision outside of combat, at least gives the illusion of a greater use for someone with the mind of Batman. And Batman never knows ahead of time what info he may need in solving a crime, so it's best to gather as much as he can because Batman is always prepared. It's visually a great device, but mechanically it's little more than a follow-the-trail device. And I only mean this when not in stealth combat. There, it has great mechanical use, but the detective vision for finding bowls comes down to looking for the flask, scanning it, and then following the vapors highlighted in the air. I'd wish there was a little bit more to it, like having to watch video footage to discover that the flask was even dropped, or later on needing to perhaps rebuild the missing doctor's handprint among potentially other personnel's partial handprints, like a kind of handprint jigsaw puzzle with a few extra pieces. The detective aspect of the Bat is expanded on far more in the sequels, and with the 21 months Rocksteady had to develop the game, priorities had to be made, and I think they made the right calls. Developing the free-flow combat and the stealth and the story and character writing was far more important in an action game than the detective side of Batman. So I'm glad something was included. It just feels like an unfortunate missed opportunity. At least it gives us something to track down Bowles to give him a piece of our mind. Oh, never mind. Looks like the Joker got to him first, tying up loose threads, no matter what. Well, this is an unfortunate wait, what? What's happening?
I know you can. Yes, it is I, Edward Nigma, the Riddler, and more importantly, your intellectual superior. My genius has allowed me to easily hack into your primitive communications. My goal is simple. You complete a series of amusingly taxing challenges and, well, you'll see.
Oh, alright, looks like we'll have to talk about Edward Nigma, aka the Riddler now. Out of all of the villains seen in Arkham Asylum, he is the one I hate the most. And thus, it makes him the greatest villain in the game, only after the Joker. I mean, you can't beat his presentation. Sure, Harley sends armed men after me, Scarecrow injects me with fear toxin, and Croc chases me through the sewers all Crash Bandicoot style, but at least they don't make me check every corner and every vent and every wall for some dang Riddler trophy. Or, God forbid, take out another trio of Joker teeth just to complete a riddle challenge. I'm just throwing batarangs at a toy. What's the puzzle here? Riddle me that, would ya? The Riddler portion of the game is some of the best and worst Asylum has to offer. Solving brain teasers that force you to look at your surroundings and maybe even use a bit of your knowledge about the Batman characters are a treat, and I get a rush of dopamine whenever I solve one. Finding the recordings of interviews with various rogues we encounter that help flesh them out are a joy to look for and find, as they give me more of that Arkham character goodness to munch on. But going through an out-of-the-way vent or busting down a wall just to grab a trophy is simply a chore for me. There's a right and a wrong way to do collectibles, and for a majority of the hidden trophies, it's the wrong way. I love video games in the collectible genre, but there, the collectibles serve as a method of guiding the player while also rewarding the player using all the movement options available to them. It's a puzzle itself to gather anything that at first seems out of reach in those games. But in Arkham Asylum, far too many trophies have the same solution of open a grate or pull down a wall. There's no need to think or consider how I'd collect them beyond doing what I've been doing the entire game. There are 240 Riddler challenges in total, including the Chronicles of Arkham, mysteries, patient interviews, riddles, and then the trophies and teeth. With 240 in total, surely nobody would have complained if a number of the trophies were cut out, right? Only 10% of the Steam player base even went out of their way to collect them all, so why the bloat? I'm always of the opinion that when it comes to content like challenges or hidden collectibles, quality is better than quantity. I much prefer a memorable collection over 20 collectibles just lying in another vent or on the floor. And the quality is there, it's just accompanied by the forgettable challenges that bring down the enjoyment of wanting to take down the Riddler. The mysteries of Arkham and the patient interviews are the ones that are the most memorable, and each time finding one, I would get excited at what new bit of lore I would hear about. Busting down a wall to find one makes the tedious experience worth it. But for the trophies, this is not the case, especially later on. A player is likely going to be searching up the remaining trophies right before the end of the game when the Asylum is at its most silent. There's no more goons to fight, no more snipers to avoid, and no more people to save. Just Batman, running his buff bod all over the asylum. All the while, Joker is sitting on his throne of mannequins, wondering what's taking so long for bats to show up. Canonically, Batman in my first playthrough decided Riddler was not worth the trouble, and just went back to the Batcave. You won this round, Nigma. Anywho, after solving the Riddler's first test, we are finally let loose into the hub of the game. Breath of the Wild intro and all. It's at this point we are introduced to the third main character. Now you may be confused by that statement. I mean, the first two are obviously the Joker and Batman, but who's the third? It can't be Harley or Gordon, because we've already met them. So who? Well, that's simple. It's the asylum itself. Over the course of the game, this hub and even buildings throughout the asylum will be reacting and changing due to our actions and events over the course of the whole game. At first, the guards are in control, and then it's overtaken by Joker goons. Then, the more insane inmates are let loose, covering the grounds. And then finally, before the big finale, Poison Ivy digs her thorns all throughout the island. The asylum feels like a living, breathing entity with its own story to tell. It's a monstrosity that eats the mentally unstable and spews out pain. This is meant to be a place where the clinically insane are to be treated, rehabilitated, healed. But all throughout, we find proof of only terror, torture, and manipulation on display. And while wandering the halls, you can hear them advertise their services, boasting about how they are voted the top facility in the state, and discussing Project Titan as a magic cure that is under development. But we all know how that turns out. They care more about profits rather than real results. Heck, the Warden's primary objective seems to be trying to become mayor of Gotham rather than treating the super criminals housed in the walls of the asylum. This is no facility, it's a beast. Later on, we even come across a wing for the even more insane, their eyes clamped open, and the surrounding floors set up to be electrified if needed. Throughout, there are super isolation chambers where inmates could be imprisoned, isolated, and suspended in the air for who knows how many days. And didn't it seem odd how Victor Zsasz could use an electroshock therapy chair to kill a hostage? That's used on patients, and it's that powerful? Safety here is not a priority. Exploitation, corruption, and greed are what this asylum breeds. It is a prison in all but name. I mean, when Blackgate needed a place to house its inmates after the fire, they chose the asylum. Maybe I don't know how mental facilities are meant to work, but they shouldn't be fitted to properly imprison a large number of criminals, even if it already houses the criminally insane. That would hopefully be a niche subset of where their research goes. But here, it seems every inmate is just another freak to seal away from the world and not an individual in need of help. And this is in no way a criticism of the game. I believe that this is the point they're trying to make. Batman is in the belly of the beast, the home of those that he has put away, and they have the advantage. Like a living animal, the asylum is the body, Batman an invading force, and the inmates the antibodies. Rocksteady shows us firsthand the cruel reality that it's not just the inmates that are monsters, but so are many that run, treat, and guard within the asylum. Except for you, Aaron Cash. You're perfect. What I will criticize is how Batman handles all this information over the course of the game. But there's no time to think about that now, because some goons are beating up my Batmobile. And how dare they mess with this beautiful piece of mechanical engineering? While I love the Batmobile in The Dark Knight for how it fits into its more realistic setting, I am so glad Rocksteady decided to design a Batmobile more akin to the comics or older TV shows and movies. It's so nice and slick. It's here for a short time, but I'm glad such detail was given to it. But we have to leave it behind after grabbing the explosive gel from the trunk. This device is a nice way to quickly install a new entryway when needed. Using our detective vision, we discover that Gordon dropped his smoking pipe, a gift from his daughter, Barbara Gordon, aka Oracle. This was no accident. He'd never leave it behind, unless it was a method to track him down.
Gordon's smarter than he looks. Left me a trail to follow.
Batman, did you just call Gordon dumb looking? This is one of your best friends. Not cool, man. We follow the trail of tobacco, blast open a wall with the gel, and notice the Joker henchman building something outside one of the buildings. Hey you guys, you deserve a break. We make our way into the medical building, and who do we find but Harley Quinn, legs up and relaxing. She's got Gordon tied up and behind an electric fence, so we'll need to find another way inside. On the roof, we find a weak point to blast our way in, finding inside that some of the goons have taken some of the doctors hostage. We will need to use stealth to save them. So now I think it's a good time to talk about stealth. It's great, not perfect, but it really makes you feel like a predator on the hunt, taking out your prey one by one. The detective vision gives you only the information you need without being too hand-holdy. It informs you if the guard is armed and where their location is. Sure, it covers some flavor text like heart rate to make it more visually appealing, but firearm status and location are the only useful nuggets of info it gives. And I wouldn't have it any other way. No cones of vision are displayed, no alert levels, and no information on if it's safe or not to take down an enemy. In the Spider-Man PS4 game, it provides you some of these extra pieces of information, and it makes the stealth a bit too easy. You wait till the game informs you that a bad guy can be taken out without being seen, and then you get out of sight before their alert gauge fills up. Pretty simple stuff. But the stealth in Arkham Asylum expects you to pick your location and timing of attack with thought, considering not only the inmate you plan to disable, but the surrounding ones as well. The game also provides multiple methods to tackle a situation. Blow open a wall to take out some enemies behind it, grab them from above while hanging from a gargoyle, corner takedowns, and more. It really makes you feel like you're using your brain. But as I mentioned, it's not perfect. One being the detective vision, which is weird to say after I sung its praise earlier. Maybe it's just me, but I find myself keeping it on for a majority of the stealth segments to keep an eye on the guards, and it gets really annoying to see everything in a hue of blue while going around knocking heads. I love the look of the asylum. I want to experience it more while knocking out the henchmen, but gotta keep an eye on where they are. Perhaps if it would keep showing their location after scanning them in detective vision and turning it off, that could help. I just want to enjoy the dread-filled rooms while I skulk around. And the second issue I had with the enemies is that they just keep bunching up, especially in the later sections. Once a body is found, almost all, if not all, of the enemies in an area will come to investigate. And while you may be able to pick off another while they are on the move, it's real annoying to wait for them to separate after they check out the body, especially if they all head in the same direction once they determine that the knocked out enemy is indeed knocked out. Once the collars that make a noise when you knock out an enemy are introduced is when this becomes a bigger problem for me. Perhaps if you could move a body after knocking them out, or hiding them in grates could add an extra element to the stealth where you work to avoid bodies being discovered as well. Or when the collars are introduced and we have access to the cryptographer, we could hack into the collars, and if successful, they're disabled. But if a mistake is made, it activates, alerting everyone that I'm nearby. Just food for thought. After saving the hostages, we are then told there are additional staff being held captive in 3 wings of the building. The 3 wings even each have their own colored path on the floor to help guide any staff, guests, or Batmen visiting. A nice in-universe guidance system. I never can get enough of these. First, we've got Aaron Cash and a doctor trapped in a room surrounded by gas. We just need to air out the room. And there's also this enemy hanging from a wire that Batman just uses to burst open a wall to access the next vent activation switch. That man could have died, Batman. What the heck? Next is a doctor trapped in what looks like some torture device found in a Saw movie. Seriously, what are they doing to these inmates on a normal day? And then finally is Dr. Young, voiced by Cree Summers, who I best know as Number 5 from Codename Kids Next Door.
Is it true the Joker escaped?
Unfortunately, yes.
Just gotta bust down this wall real quick. Plug your ears, Doc.
Let me see.
We make our way to the main room, being introduced to the knife-wielding enemies on the way. They require us to stun them before they can be dealt with, a nice addition to add further complexity to the combat. With everyone regrouping in the main medical section, Dr. Young mentions how she needs to get her medical notes. Initially, Batman's against it because, madmen are running around, but he reluctantly agrees for Aaron Cash to take her after an elevator full of enemies begins to arrive. We make our way down deep into the medical facility only to see Gordon being dragged away, begging for help. But it's too late. he's dead. Batman immediately tries to contact Barbara to tell her that her father has fallen in the line of duty, but the call cannot be connected.
I'm sorry, the number you've dialed isn't available. Please leave a message after the tone.
And this right here tells us two things. One, Batman at this point in his journey is more open with his teammates than he is later on in the series, when considering how he hides his failures in those games. Gordon just died on his watch. Batman just failed to save Commissioner Gordon, and his first thought isn't to hide the truth until the night is over. No, he tries to tell Barbara the unfortunate truth as she deserves to know what just happened. This is a Batman not yet scarred by the events of Arkham City, or after, in Arkham Knight, he will conceal his infection by the Joker from his team, but also the supposed death of Barbara from Robin. Now obviously Rocksteady did not have the stories of the next installments in mind when developing this game, but retroactively, with the sequels in mind, it paints an even greater picture of the changes Arkham's Batman goes through between now and Arkham Knight. The second thing that this tells us is that Batman is kinda dumb right here. He's tangoed with Scarecrow before, and while the Commissioner being dead isn't unlikely and completely believable, the unable to connect service line should tip him off that something's not right. I mean, my first time playing, I suspected that this was some fear toxin effect, but Batman doesn't. Sure, he can't have a method to prevent toxin effects, as Crane makes newer versions, but he has to know something's up, right? And if it wasn't clear beforehand, finding his parents' dead bodies in the morgue will. Gordon's death is never a real serious possibility to the player, like Barbara's death is in Arkham Knight. I mean, spooky music is playing and Batman's eyes are glowing. Batman fans know this isn't real. Was a missed opportunity to make the player think even for just a few minutes that Gordon really did die by keeping the music normal and removing the glowing "you've been infected" eyes up until the morgue, and then let the creep really sink in. Speaking of the morgue, inside we get told to get out, get out, get out by some disembodied voices. A neat way to mess with the player and another in-universe way to communicate to the player where to go if they're confused, because you need to get out of the room the same way you entered to progress. We then find Bruce's parents in body bags, looking pretty good for being dead for a few decades. And then we're jump scared by Scarecrow, removing any doubt in our minds who it is we're dealing with. We are then given a short stealth platforming section where we need to avoid being seen by Scarecrow, similar to the Dragon God in Demon Souls, except it's much less annoying with Scarecrow. Once we make it to the bat symbol light, we are able to snap ourselves out of the fear toxin haze and discover that the Commissioner wasn't really dead. It's just some no-name guard. Thank God it was nobody important. I'll talk about Scarecrow in depth a bit later, but I will say, while he is a far cry from the amazing villain he becomes in Arkham Knight, I still like what they did with him here. The platforming section is a good way to symbolize Batman wrestling with his own mind and fears, struggling to regain control, and once he reaches the bat symbol, it's like he's reminding himself who he is and what he stands for and what he needs to accomplish. He's the gosh darn Batman, and he has people to save. It's much better than just having Batman see enemies as monsters, like how it's usually shown with the fear toxin, because when Batman sees this trick once, he knows it's not real. But these platforming sections aren't physically happening, it's all within his mind, since we awaken right where we started in the morgue. The toxin was just feeding on the part of his brain, telling him it's all pointless and to just give up. With that nightmare out of the way and the knowledge that Commissioner Gordon is still alive, we make our way forward where we find Harley holed up with him surrounded by Joker's men. And if we are seen at all, Gordon's really gonna get it this time. So it's a nice variation on the stealth section that demands perfect stealth rather than some of the combat stealth areas where you're free to run up and punch a guy so long as you can escape before death. We take all of them out, surprise Harley, and rescue Gordon. Not gonna tie up Harley bats, just gonna leave her there. Okay. Nearby, we discover this Patient X we've heard so much about from videos playing throughout the asylum, and it's none other than Bane. Turns out Titan is an altered version of the venom concoction Bane uses to beef himself up, and Dr. Young has been draining him to the bone for venom. Joker then pumps him full of the compound and Bane goes full rage mode, and now it's boss battle time.
Nice lady.
Now, depending on how you determine what a boss battle is, you may disagree with me on this, but in my opinion, there are 12 boss battles throughout Arkham Asylum. 4 instances of Titan-fueled henchman battles, 3 instances of battling Scarecrow, Bane, a Harley Quinn gauntlet, Killer Croc, Poison Ivy, and a Titan Joker. And with how tight of a turnaround this game had, I think the usage of Titan henchmen here and there is understandable, but it is still a bit disappointing as it makes those battles feel very samey, since once you fought a Titan henchman, you fought them all. But as mentioned before, their priorities were likely on more important parts of the game, such as the stealth and overall combat. What really gets me is how they made Bane just a reskin of these Titan henchman fights. You can't even say that this is a tutorial on how to fight the Titan brutes we face later on, as we already fought one earlier in the game. Though I guess that one's heart did stop mid-fight. But still, it introduced the mechanics of needing to batarang the foe when they charge to interrupt them. Bane, however, is more than just a brute. He's highly intelligent in the comics, even discovering Batman is really Bruce Wayne under the mask. I get that he's hopped up on Venom in this encounter, but it's always a pet peeve of mine with adaptations of Bane just boiling him down to just a big, strong man with nothing but muscles. We could have had it where Bane won't just simply run straight into the wall when being blinded by a batarang, but instead stopping just short of impact, thus requiring us to understand that we need to maybe place explosive gel on the walls, lining him up to charge that wall and detonate it in his face when he stops short of collision. Or maybe he needs to refuel his Venom with tanks surrounding the area, and we need to destroy them to be able to wear him down and open him up to hand-to-hand combat. This kind of thing would have required a bit of a change to the setup to this fight, but anything more than the same tactic used on the henchman bosses would have been much appreciated. But no matter, we take him down and give him a close-up of how cool our Batmobile looks. He's a big man, he can take a car to the face. Gordon then leaves the island to tend to the city at large, as it seems Joker is threatened to detonate bombs across Gotham if anyone comes onto Arkham Island. With the Commissioner safe, we need to upgrade our arsenal. Lucky for us, he's got a second Batcave hidden here on the island. Because of course he does, he's the gosh darn Batman. We analyze the Titan formula, learning how it's more potent than normal Venom, and acquire the Bat Claw. A neat way to pull objects, open elevated vents, and disarm enemies, like the stun baton wielders. Now upgraded, it's time to track down Dr. Young. Turns out Oracle was able to dig up some info and found that Joker was secretly funding her research through an alias in the hopes he could use this new Titan serum to bring Gotham and the Bat to their knees. And she was successful, obviously, but she had a change of heart and tried to send the money back. Joker doesn't take no for an answer though, so not only has this breakout been a spectacle for Batman, but also a way for him to get a hold of his Titan serum formula so he can mass produce more. When last we saw her, she was heading to the Arkham Mansion with Aaron Cash, so we head there, taking out snipers along the way. We'd go through the front door, but it's blocked off by an electric fence and these two jokesters.
Come on, tough guy. Come and get us.
Oh, you guys are so gonna get it when I find a way in. We make our way in through a suspended vent and introduce ourselves inside. See, told you were gonna get it. We clear out the main hall of bad guys and find some security officers tied up in the library with a bomb about to explode if we don't disarm it in time. Clearing a path using some creative redecorating, the bomb is disabled and guards saved. Dr. Young's not here though. Later on, Aaron Cash is found to be held hostage and we save him as well. Turns out the doctor made a run for it to her office, likely to get the formula before Joker can, and once in her office, we find she indeed secured the documents and escaped. Using detective vision, we're able to follow her most recent handprints to track her down, and my god, woman, who touches this many surfaces when walking through a building? Well, that's what I thought initially on my first playthrough. But on closer inspection, it looks like the placements of the handprints are trying to communicate how she likely was hiding behind walls or corners, checking for enemies before moving forward. Sure, there's a few print locations that seem weird, but for the most part, they do some environmental storytelling of how the doctor got around without being caught. She walked through the halls slowly and carefully on alert, not just panicking, running to the library, and the prints communicate this beautifully. We follow the prince to the library, finding that the young doctor, Dr. Young, hid the files inside of a book. With the formula too dangerous to ever be used, we destroy it. Joker doesn't seem that upset by this revelation. Why do you need the notes when you can get the source of the knowledge? Batman then develops a cough, I'm sure that's nothing, and we exit the library into the world's longest hallway. That's right, Scarecrow got us again with the fear toxin, which transforms the asylum into the infamous crime alley, where Bruce is forced to relive the moment of seeing his parents' lifeless bodies on the floor after being gunned down. And in this moment, Bruce isn't Batman. He's just a scared 8-year-old boy who just lost his parents because of some punk with a gun. Yes, I did steal that line from Justice League Animated. Shout out to the best superhero TV show. But it's not all darkness in this moment, because there's one ray of hope. Jim Gordon. He's always been a good cop, a good man, even back then. When all the other cops just saw some rich kid with a butler that will have an easy life, Jim saw a little boy in pain. Pain that will never fully go away, and no amount of money could ever make that better.
I know you don't feel like answering me, but it's the only way to catch who did this.
Why did you do it, officer? Why?
I don't know. It's this city. There's something wrong with it. And listen, son, call me Jim.
I know Batman's origins have been done to death, but I love this scene. Sure, it runs on a bit too long. This hallway is literally too long in my opinion. And if it's going for a spooky tone with this hallway, it's not really hitting it for me at least. But this conveys to the player that Batman, deep down, is still that scared, sad little boy just trying to make sense of the world. Though it's been years since their deaths, the loss of his parents is still fresh to him, and it will always be fresh because part of him blames himself for what happened.
Father, you should have stood up to him, son. Like a man.
He asked them to go to the movies, and he didn't do anything to save them when they needed it. Of course it isn't his fault, he was 8, but through all the intelligence that is Batman, a small part of him will always irrationally blame himself for not saving them. And that is why he plans, prepares, and trains, so he will never feel like he could have done more when tragedy strikes. It's a powerful scene whose tone is only slightly undermined by the fact that young Bruce looks like the demon kid from the game Lucius. I expect him to start murdering doctors after this every time. After this is obviously another Scarecrow stealth section with a bit of combat with some skeletons, but they are just reskins of the normal goons we've faced before. Batman then activates the bat signal and awakens to find himself in the clock tower of the building, which I am a bit torn on because I love how on a second playthrough you can see how the areas of the Toxin world reflect the areas Batman must have ran through. The Toxin world this time around reflects the interior of the mansion. He then ran outside into the courtyard and graveyard where he was attacked by goons, who he saw as the skeletons. He then scaled some buildings and fought more enemies on the grounds, until he returned to the mansion, climbed it, and entered the clock tower as seen by the clock pendulums and gears in the Toxin world. It's so well developed, but I have to then ask, why is it when we awoke the first time, we're still standing in the exact same spot as before we enter the toxin-hazed area? And in the final section, after running around, we end up again in the same spot. In the first section, it seems to be that the Toxin world all happens inside of Batman's mind, not at all in a fear-distorted reality. But in the second instance, everything seems to be physically happening in the real world. But due to the toxin, Batman sees the world crumbling and the enemies as monsters. And then in the final section, it's 50-50. The enemies are real, but the platforming is not, as we awaken in the same spot as we started, except for the fallen enemies now on the ground, which were seen as monsters in the third section. It's a bit nitpicky, but the inconsistency of what is and is not happening in the Toxin world are unfortunate, especially with how much I adore the setup of this second Scarecrow section. Oh, and how did Batman even end up in the clock tower? He clearly did it while hopped up on Toxin, but when regaining consciousness, we're trapped until we release the bell, causing it to crash. They did all this setup in the Toxin world to reflect a journey that Batman did in reality, but couldn't add a smashed hole in the clock face or something? Just a little detail that communicates how he got in here, but not one that could be exited through, would have been a nice touch. But no matter. After Batman rings the bell so aggressively it falls out of the sky, by the way, subscribe and ring the bell. God, I am so subtle. Nailed it. After dropping down and looking for Dr. Young, it seems Victor Zsasz has escaped again and taken her hostage. Now I know what you're supposed to do is to take cover near a corner and use a batarang to knock him out when he pokes his head out from behind the doctor. But what I do every single playthrough is I completely forget this and waste time looking for a vent or some way to sneak in from behind, which inevitably leads to the doctor getting quote-unquote saved by Zsasz. I can't be the only one that does this, right? I mean, the game literally tells you what to do if you just get a little bit closer, but my genius mind just immediately zips to the roof, completely missing that. This is why I'd never be able to be Batman. This part really makes me feel like a complete idiot. After a quick reload, we save the doctor and are able to question her, cause she's got a lot of explaining to do. Turns out Joker has gallons of Titan on hand, and Victor Zsasz got the formula out of the dock. So now Joker has both the formula and the materials to make use of it. There's a lab on the island that he'd have to use, so that's our next stop. All that's left before we leave is to take Dr. Young in, because she's gonna have her own cell in Gotham State Penitentiary after all the stuff she's done.
Oh my god!
Get out of the way!
Never mind. Looks like Joker prepared for that, and Harley's here just to rub it in and kidnap the warden after knocking him upside the head with his own cane. And you know what? He kinda deserved that bonk. He's been a very bad boy. Quincy Sharp is a completely original character made for Arkham Asylum, and it is very fitting for him to be running an asylum, and he likely deserves to be here himself. As we learn from the Chronicles of Arkham hidden throughout the island, Sharp believes himself to be possessed by the spirit of Amadeus Arkham himself, and views it as his mission to clean Gotham of the insane that are running amok. And that seems to be by any means necessary. Because while it's not officially known if he knew about the Titan experiment, he in all likelihood did. I mean, it is his asylum. Would he really care for the Titan experiments without seeing this Patient X, aka Bane, for himself? Not likely. The existence of Patient X and Project Titan are mentioned in recordings played for guests throughout the asylum, and though it's only mentioned as a potential method to cure insanity, its darker side is hidden to the public. So with it so publicly broadcasted, I expect that he was aware of all of it, but cared not for the means, only the results. I mean, a chemical that could cure the insane within the asylum? Surely that would all but guarantee his election to mayor, which seems to be all he cares about. Any method, test, or sacrifice is worth it if it means a chance to help him climb the political ladder. He views himself as the savior of Gotham, so he must step high to guide the city, no matter who he needs to step on to reach it. Even if he doesn't know of the Titan experiments, it at the very least shows a lack of concern or care for what is going on in his asylum, so long as results are being worked towards. I mean, a doctor under his employ is keeping Bane captive, producing a dangerous chemical, and has a secret hidden lab for mass production all under his nose? You cannot keep all of this hidden from someone that would conduct the least bit of checks on his facility. So it's likely he just doesn't care what happens to those housed in the asylum, as demonstrated by all the torturous and dark methods of trying to cure the inmates. So long as the doctors think progress is being made, Sharp doesn't care one bit what they do. He's a cruel man, but still, at the end of the day, Batman will save anyone in danger. Him included. So we beat up some goons left by Harley, use detective vision to track the warden via his blood trail, and make our way into the cell block where the most violent and mentally deranged inmates are held. These men are locked away with their eyes forced open and mouths stretched wide, all while being surrounded by others suffering from the same so-called treatment. Their animal-like yells filling the halls. It's enough to make a sane man go mad just hearing it. This has to be one of the most unsettling areas in the entire game. Sure, we've seen murderous henchmen and overly extreme treatment devices, if you can call them that, throughout the island, but here, it's something else. These are not people anymore. They are mindless beasts, and Batman takes no pleasure in even taking them out in combat. Always careful to knock them down in one blow and knock them out with a finisher. Not a drawn-out fight breaking bones or dislocating shoulders. Seeing them like this begs the question, Were their minds like this when they first entered the asylum? Or were they mentally broken men, brought over the edge by the treatment placed on them within these walls? More victims of the beast that is the asylum that were devoured, chewed up, and spit into these cells, sectioned off from the rest of the facility simply to be tested on and forgotten. It's unclear, but every time I enter this section in a playthrough, I get a little chill once the sound of the inmates starts kicking in. I also get super turned around in this place every time, forcing me to hear the screams for way longer than I would like. But after a while, we come face to face with Poison Ivy in the Green Mile. Oh hey, I get that reference. And I gotta say, Ivy's design, nice. It may be a bit over-sexualized, but from a character side, it makes sense. As someone who views herself as a plant rather than a human, clothing has no meaning to her. Yet, as an inmate of Arkham, she is forced to wear the red Arkham shirt, thus visualizing her status as an inmate. And the vines attached to her body create a similar look to veins in the body, thus further symbolizing her transformation from animal to plant. I'm not sure why they secured her here surrounded by Arkham lunatics, but she needed to be somewhere during the game process, so I guess they didn't have the time to create a more logical holding area for her. Or maybe it has to do with the lunatics being immune to her plant spores due to their insanity. Because typically, you want to keep people away from her, especially men, as she can control their minds to her will. But maybe the lunatics are so far gone, there's nothing to take control of. Just an idea. Regardless, she's locked up, and Joker didn't seem to have her on the guest list for the party, so he left her caged. And cry as much as she wants that the plants are screaming out in pain. Batman doesn't have time for this, so he leaves her in lockup to continue our search for the Warden. Next door, we not only find the Warden, but also Aaron Cash in lockup. Except, of course, it's not Cash, as our detective vision reveals he has no bones. It's none other than Clayface, and while it's sad we didn't get to combat Clayface in this game, I appreciate Rocksteady letting us at least see him, sort of. Throughout the asylum, we see references to others in Batman's rogues gallery, such as Two-Face, Penguin, Ra's al Ghul, and Firefly, but we don't get to really meet them. But here, we get to see old Clayface put his transformation powers and acting prowess on display to try and fool Batman into letting him out. He shapeshifts into Cash, and after rescuing the Warden, morphs into Sharp to try and convince us that we got the wrong guy, and then lastly into Commissioner Gordon. Good stuff, Clayface. And I love the detail of the sign warning that he may be impersonating personnel. I get the feeling he's fooled one or two guards before warranting the need for that sign. Upstairs, we find Warden Sharp, and Harley found Ivy. Ivy may not be on the party list, but Harley's got a soft spot for her, so she releases her from the cell. Guess we're gonna have to deal with her later on. Not one to be outdone, Joker takes it up a notch by letting out his own group of new partygoers, freeing all of the lunatics we passed through in the building. Batman's list of things to do tonight just got a bit longer, now needing to put Ivy back in lockup, as well as deal with all of the lunatics. You know this is all your fault, Sharp. If only you were a better warden. We still free him, though, and acquire the Cryptographic Sequencer, allowing us to hack terminals around the island. And it's fun the first few times, trying to get the right sequence to hack by moving the thumbsticks into the right orientation. But it gets old real fast. I mean, do a lot of people enjoy this? Tons of games around this time and still today feel the need to have hacking minigames, but for me, they just get old really fast and overstay their welcome. For the sequencer, all you do is go up to a terminal, spin your thumbs till it lights up, and you win. I don't even think I've ever run the risk of failing one of these. I wouldn't have been opposed to the sequencer just automatically being able to hack any terminal it's able to, and maybe lock doors behind specific key cards that would be collected throughout the island, thus sectioning off areas until specific points in the campaign. This would have at least helped flesh out the Metroidvania aspects of the game, but I'm holding off on that discussion for now. Just let it be known I'm not the biggest fan of the sequencer gadget. With it in hand, we escape the room and re-enter the main holding area, where Harley is waiting. She Super Mario wall jumps up to the top platform and enables the electrified floors, ending the life of one of the guards. Geez, how strong did they make the voltage? The electric floor proves to be for nothing, since we can immediately grapple up to combat the goons Harley brought with her. All while she swings from the hanging light, like in that Wrecking Ball music video with Miley Cyrus. After making short work of the henchmen, Harley runs off. We hack into the system to turn off the electric floors and give chase, only to find her holed up with some guards suspended above electrified pools of water. And what do we do to save them? That's right, we hack 3 separate terminals and cut them down to help them escape. And this is why I dislike the sequencer. Instead of it being a tool in our arsenal that is a part of a puzzle or a task, it is always just the answer. Oh, something needs hacking? Hack it and boom, the puzzle it's involved in is done. Tools in a playable character's belt are best when they build on top of each other, each new tool building on the usefulness of the previous one. While not a fair comparison, think of Portal 2. When playing, it will slowly introduce new tools and mechanics, and then combine them and their availability, forcing the player to think, how can I use what I have available to me and in what order to succeed in this room? Now, I'm not saying Arkham Asylum is a puzzle game like Portal, and nor should it be. But if you want me to feel like I am using my brain in moments like this, forcing the use of multiple tools would be nice. This is something done better in the later games, however. With the guards saved and out of harm's way, Harley makes a quick escape, but she doesn't get too far. She's holed up in another wing of the maximum security section. Time for the Harley Quinn boss fight. Harley Quinn is special among the rest of the DC ensemble, as she doesn't originate from the comics, but was an original character made for the Batman the Animated Series back in 1992. She was created by Paul Dini, as he thought it might be a neat idea to have a female villain character for an episode about the Joker. And after seeing Arlene Sorkin play a clown in Days of Our Lives, the pieces started to fall into place. Harley Quinn was then created, and Arlene cast as her voice actress. Quinn is more than a pretty face covered in clown makeup, though. She's a skilled fighter, an expert gymnast, and a highly intelligent psychologist. The great comic runs of the character that explores her as an individual, not attached to the hip of Mr. J, had not yet been created, but still, there was depth to this character to explore at the point of the release of Arkham Asylum. So what did they do with Harley Quinn's boss fight? She hides in a tower while she sends waves of the same goons we've been fighting all night at us, while the floor occasionally electrifies, forcing us to move platforms. There's no grand platforming trap, no puzzles to be solved to reach Harley and put an end to her. This is a character that has gone toe-to-toe with Batbrain in the past and held up a bit, and even capturing him on some occasions. She may be crazy and in love with a psychotic clown, but she's still a smart foe to be reckoned with. And when she does come down face to face with Batman, she gets taken down in an easy single strike. And again, I know this game was a quick creation, so it's not surprising another boss battle was created as a fight X amount of henchmen till you win battle. And it's not much of a criticism, since we know that given the chance to really stretch their legs, Rocksteady can make some really enjoyable and spectacular boss battles. It's just a shame how close together these henchman boss battles are to each other when the back end of the game has the more unique boss encounters. Not you though. I mean, if I showed the footage to someone that had not yet gotten to this part in the game, could they tell that this was a boss battle just by looking? I doubt it, as it seems like just another encounter with the inmates of the asylum. Anyways, we mop up the Joker squad, give Harley a slight concussion, lock her away, and the Joker uninvites her to the party. Wow, with friends like that, am I right? Here, we also see a fun little reference to Mr. Freeze, one of my all-time favorite bosses in the Arkham series that appears in the sequel. And just an amazing character that was revamped for the animated series. Seriously, watch Batman the Animated Series if you haven't and you enjoy these games, you will not regret it. There's a whole episode where the Joker fears being arrested by the IRS. It is peak television.
I'm crazy enough to take on Batman, but the IRS, no, thank you.
But back to Arkham, we find a hidden party list kept between Harley's party balloons, and on it we can see all the main players Joker wants to attend his little shindig on the island. Some have frowny faces and some have smiley faces. I assume the smiles mean that they can make it as they're on the island, while those with the frown can't attend as they're not in lockup. For those who can't make it, we have Selina Kyle, or Catwoman, Harvey Dent, or Two-Face, Jarvis Tetch, who's the Mad Hatter, Oswald Cobblepot, the Penguin, and Arnold Wesker, who puppets Scarface. For those on the island, we have Basil Carlo, or Clayface, who Joker for some reason just never released. What a bad host. Walton Jones, aka Killer Croc, who is still in the sewers, and Luke Oliver, who was the winner of a contest in real life, getting to have his face rendered into the game. How nice of Joker to invite him. Funny enough, Batman asked what the smiles next to each name means, and Harley tells him to figure it out himself, but the list never really comes up again. Perhaps it was going to play a slightly small role in a reveal, or maybe it's just there for an Easter egg. Or maybe the ending party is supposed to be a surprise to the player and Batman, even though Joker constantly mentions that he's going to be hosting some kind of party on the island. I don't know. But as an Easter egg, it's great. Just confusing as a plot device since attention is drawn directly to it. With the list in tow, we take a scan of her fingerprints to help us find out where this secret lab in the garden building that Dr. Young had mentioned. And that is where Joker will be holed up, making more of his Titan chemical. We exit the cell block and head over to the garden, while the island is now crawling with lunatics that Joker released, the madness of the island growing ever more uncontrolled. Inside the gardens, we dispatch a few more of Joker's men and conduct a bit of stealth until we come face to face with Joker just on the other side of a harmless pool of water holding a guard hostage. Alright, now's the chance for Batman to finally get Joker talking.
Let him go now.
Really? Okay, if you say so,
No!
Oh, come on, Batman. You never tell Joker to let someone go. It always ends like this. Phrasing. Thank goodness it was just a guard and not somebody important like the Commissioner. With the path forward now blocked by the deadly electric water, we are forced to backtrack to the power generator room, take out more goons, and disable the power to allow our path towards the Joker to be cleared. Before that, though, we also managed to save a janitor in the process. He's probably the least corrupt person on the island, after Aaron Cash, that is. He informs us that the henchmen rigged the power control terminal to explode if messed with, so we now have a timer on our hacking minigame to disable it. A nice little addition, but I don't think I have once worried about this timer and just solved the sequencer puzzle as usual. With the power off, we can make our way through the water and blast our way into an old structure connected to the botanical gardens. Another remnant of the old buildings of the asylum that decayed and were built over throughout the years, showing the age yet resilientness of the asylum. This also gives us, the player, a brief platforming section, and while a bit simple and short, it's a nice change of pace between combat encounters. It sort of reminds me of the climbing courses in Assassin's Creed 2 that released a few months later. How you would need to make use of the structures around and the openings it provides to ascend to a higher point needed to progress. Though in Assassin's Creed, those were more fleshed out, as the climbing was an obvious priority for its gameplay, while not so much for Arkham Asylum, which is more combat focused. Once back inside the gardens, we save another janitor who informs us that Joker has more faculty held hostage further into the building that we'll need to rescue. So we enter the aviary, where instead of birds being kept in cages, we have the hostages caged instead, and suspended above a deep, deep pit. If caught, a guard in the control room will flip one switch, sending the cages plummeting to the depths below. Who makes a switch like that? I get that you need a way to lower the cages to the ground for maintenance and cleaning, but one that just makes it completely fall? The designers clearly never expected the crazy murderous inmates to possibly break out and use them as torture devices, which sounds like a reasonable assumption until you realize this is Gotham. Always assume that something can be used by a psycho in this city. Joking aside, I do love the aesthetic of this stealth section. Not to mention that unlike the previous section that required us to be unseen, in this one, everyone has one of those collars that will go off if the goon is knocked out, thus removing the possibility of eliminating enemies as we go out. This time, we need to remain completely unseen, constantly aware of not just the guards ahead of us, but the ones behind us, since they can't be taken out of the equation. A wonderful evolution on the stealth formula. So we make it past all the guards and up to the control room, knocking down the head henchman in control of the switch. With him out of the way, the hostages are out of danger and we are free to remove all the remaining enemies however we see fit, and release the captured faculty. Hopefully one of them will know something about the secret lab Joker's holed up in.
Where is the lab?
Back over there. I always get buzzed through. There's a hidden door, but Well, you know, it's hidden.
I'll find it. Stay here.
Oh wow, thanks Doc. No kidding, it's hidden. That's why I'm asking where the lab is. I am Batman. Just show me where the door is. Oh, thanks for saving me, Batman, but I can't show you how to get into the secret lab where Joker's making a terrible chemical, cause you know, it's secret. Sure, you get buzzed in, but you can at least show me where that is. What a weenie, this guy. Without any help, we're forced to do this the old-fashioned way, by following Harley Quinn's fingerprints until we find a panel hiding the controls into the lab. Inside, we find Joker with crates of Titan chemical loaded onto a supply elevator, all wrapped in a nice bow. Joker only has 2 henchmen with him, so to even the playing field, he forcefully injects 2 of them with Titan, transforming them into the Titan brutes we have faced earlier, but double the trouble. I like to think that these men had no idea this was possibly going to happen to them, and Joker just on a whim transformed them to make a quick escape, showing his callous nature towards the lives of those around him. All are just playthings for him to use, break, and throw away as he pleases. Now that Batman is busy, Joker makes a clean getaway. With 2 brutes on our hands, you'd think that this would be a bit more challenging than handling 1 brute. And it is, but not by much. That's because for every third of HP that you knock off one of them, Batman is able to mount the beast and ride him like a bat cowboy at a rodeo, slamming the brutes into each other, chipping off HP from the second brute, leading Batman to mount the second one, and repeating. It kinda reminds me of the mounting mechanic in Monster Hunter Rise, where you ride one monster into the other, knocking it down, only then to mount the second monster to bash it back into the first for tons of easy damage. However, the double brute blitz is something I can really enjoy, even if it is a bit on the easy side. During this brawl, the equipment to produce more Titan was destroyed, so that's one less problem, but Joker still escaped with a whole heck of a lot of the stuff already, so we need to create an anti-Titan serum to combat the effects of the chemical. It looks as though Joker was using a venom plant hybrid to help synthesize the Titan compound, with the plant being the key to combat the chemical. And there's only one person on this island that can help us when it comes to plants: Poison Ivy. So our next mission is to track her down and convince her it's in the best interest of the plants on this island for her to help us track down the Joker. Since Batman's tangoed with Miss Ivy before, he already has her pheromones on file to help track her down. Unfortunately, we're trapped here when the Joker retracted the metal walkway during the fight. So it's time for an upgrade. Introducing the Line Launcher. This allows Batman to zip across any gap, so long as there is a solid wall both in front and behind him. And with 2 quick line launches through the gardens, we find Poison Ivy enjoying her newfound freedom among her plants. Batman requires her help to create an antidote, but Ivy isn't too keen on helping out. Besides, what does she care what happens to a few animals due to the Joker's rampage? And the cherry on top is she gets to see Batman squirm fruitlessly against the Joker's plans. Not one for games though. Batman crushes a tentacle vine threatening him, which harms Ivy through her connection to it. Ivy's been out of the sun for who knows how long, so her powers are not yet at full strength. So she is in no position to threaten Batman, even surrounded by a ton of plants. Ivy relents and reveals that there is indeed an ancient plant on the island that can help, but it's located deep in Killer Croc's underground lair. It's never easy, is it? Batman demands Ivy return to her cell and then heads out to find a way into Croc's lair. Oh yeah, just leave the super criminal to her own devices. I'm sure she'll follow your orders and just imprison herself as you asked. Come on, Batman, just take like 5 minutes to imprison her yourself. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, as they say. We currently have no idea how to get down into the lair, however, but Guard Cash may have the answer to this problem. It would be worth paying him a visit in the Arkham Mansion. Okay, well that's gonna be a problem. Turns out Joker gave Ivy a bit of a Titan injection at some point, but I have no idea how or when? Maybe through the plants? I'm not sure, but it did happen. Could have been better explained or even shown, especially since we did see Joker escape, so he's not in the building, but no big deal. All that matters is that she is juiced up, and due to her unique genetic makeup and ability to create her own toxin, she's affected differently than everyone else. She doesn't get a violent, painful transformation, but instead, it's a crazy power boost, even in her sunlight-deprived state. She's now covered Arkham Island in thick vines and dotted the islands with plants that shoot out homing spore attacks that kinda look like the man-eating plants in Crash Bandicoot when destroyed. How many times can I mention Crash Bandicoot in a Batman video, I wonder? Making our way through the now further twisted Arkham grounds, we re-enter the mansion to ask Cash for info on Croc. And then we just leave. Every playthrough of this, I completely forget that we revisit the mansion here for just a minute or two. I guess this was intended as another method to teach the players about using the line launcher, but I feel that the garden did a pretty good job of that on its own. The trip just feels kind of pointless. We could have easily have been told from Oracle of a way that she found into Croc's lair and skipped this entire section, and nothing of interest would have been changed. It messes with the pacing of the game, since the mansion isn't a combat section to get to Cash, or even really a puzzle, since the line gun was just acquired, and it's at the forefront of our minds, making it the obvious answer to get over the toxic gas floors in the mansion. I would have really preferred if after the gardens we just went straight to Croc and acquired a method to reach him via comms. And that method to reach Killer Croc is with an elevator located in intensive care. It will take us right down to the sewers. Seems the guards have just been throwing food down there and trying to forget about Croc altogether. Yep, he's definitely getting the treatment he needs, being treated like an animal. Good job, Arkham. Oh yeah, and just a side note, Killer Croc also has a normal cell up on the grounds that has a ton of human skeletons in it, and they don't look like they're new. This didn't happen in the breakout. Have they been just okay with Croc eating inmates? This is completely unscripted. I just forgot to write about that. Who allowed this? It's spooky, but why? So we make our way to intensive care, now needing to be on alert of snipers on the roof of the island, as they will make short work of Batman. Oh, and on the way we come across some inmates now wearing Arkham security jackets as a method to fool the player that the people that they're approaching are not enemies, but instead allies. That is, unless the player notices their faces or the weaponry being held. This part never fooled me, but I can imagine a few people being tricked and getting a little surprised when combat begins when walking up to who they assume are friendly. I kinda wish there were more moments like this just sprinkled throughout the island, just to keep the player on their toes and also add a little bit of extra paranoia on the island, cause you never know who exactly you can and can't trust at a moment's notice. Entering into intensive care yet again, we find that Joker has a new surprise for us. It looks like he started to set charges on the gargoyles that we perch on to survey the area during stealth, as well as do hanging takedowns from. Yet again, a wonderful evolution on the stealth mechanic, since they are just such an advantage during stealth. While the game provides many methods to take on enemies in these sections, such as grates in the floors or corner takedowns, the easiest and most effective method is almost always to wait atop a gargoyle until you see an opening. This new limitation forces the player to engage with all the options at their disposal, and not just one trick over and over again. The only issue with it is that I think it's a bit of a late addition, as unless I'm forgetting, I think that this is the last stealth segment like this in the game. So it would have been nice to be forced to use alternative takedown methods earlier in our adventures. With them out of the way, we clear our path that'll lead us to the elevator down into Croc's lair. The year is 2009, and Rocksteady released the most disappointing Batman game ever created. We open with the bat symbol shown upside down for some reason, and the Batmobile racing towards the madhouse known as Arkham. However, it's a bit silly for a road sign to call it a madhouse though. And Batman's not even the one driving the Batmobile, it's the Joker. Sure, it's an interesting setup making us think, oh no, what happened and how will Batman get out of this one? But then it opens with us playing as the Joker and Batman's strapped into a standing gurney. No real intro into entering the asylum, no explanation on how Harley and Zsasz are free, nothing. A poor opening to a game if you ask me. Scarface is shown on the TVs as the warden of Joker's Asylum as it's called, and we see who I think is Commissioner Gordon and some others being taken away by some gang members to be executed, I assume. I was promised a Batman game, not some Joker horror experience. This game is off to a rough start if you ask me. Scarecrow then appears as some kind of doctor to check on Batman's vitals. He calls us insane and even knows that we're Bruce Wayne and about our parents' deaths turning us into the Dark Knight. Was there some kind of hidden tie-in comic I was supposed to read before playing this? Because I'm completely lost. But before the game gives us any kind of answers, Doc Scarecrow says there's nothing left to us, and Joker decides it's best to put Old Yeller down and shoots us in the face. I thought there was gonna be a QuickTime event, but no. I just die, and the game says to use the middle stick to dodge the gun? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know I needed to use an N64 controller for this PC game. I'm using an Xbox controller. What is this nonsense? At least this game had the decency to be short if it was gonna be this bad and confusing. But for a 5-minute experience, $60 on release is way too steep. I have no idea how this spawned multiple sequels. What a waste of time. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened there. Seems the fear toxin affected the video. Anyways, the fake out segment of the game is just genius. My first time playing this genuinely got me. I thought my game had messed up. I didn't even notice that Joker was the one driving this time in the Batmobile. It wasn't until I regained control that I became aware of what was really going on. I heard that this segment almost wasn't even included in the final product because Rocksteady feared players would just turn off the game thinking it broke before the twist was fully revealed. And I am so glad that they didn't remove it. I love when games mess with the player and break the fourth wall. It's not used nearly enough in my opinion, and it's something that can only really be done in an interactive art form like video games. And from a symbolic perspective, this scene shows us a few things. One, it shows us the fear in Batman, that he and the Joker are not that different. With their roles reversed, a dark reflection of this fear that he too could one day fall deep into madness, just as the clown prince of crime has. This scene also showcases Batman's fear that he belongs in this madhouse, that what he is doing doesn't stem from a sense of justice or vengeance, but from a deep, seated insanity of his mind. I mean, he dresses up as a bat for crying out loud. Scarface's website line read comments as much.
If you have any questions, please visit us at www.IThinkI'mGoingCrazyAndDressLikeABat.com/idiot.
Everything said in this scene is a thought in Batman's mind, so he too even doubts his mission a bit deep inside, even if just for a little bit. And third, this scene reflects the horrors of the asylum itself. When we start the game, we see the insane one strapped down, while the professionals examine and guard him. But as we have seen throughout the game, the asylum and its faculty can be anything but professional, or even sane in a way. Batman seeing the doctors and guards as super insane criminals might just be how it feels to enter the asylum. Sure, there's definitely crazy people that are locked up in here, but how many people enter into the asylum somewhat mentally broken, or completely sane to begin with, or God forbid, wrongfully convicted? Then, once inside, the corrupt doctors and guards slowly break their minds and spirits through their treatments and just create the madman that they already assumed was before them. Today, this scene reminds me of the amazing show, The Penguin. Oh, I guess spoilers for The Penguin. Skip ahead a bit if needed. In the show, Sophia Falcone is framed for the murder of several women by her own father, the crime boss Carmine Falcone. He makes it so that she is determined to be insane by forcing other family members to attest to her mental instability and making it all but impossible to prove her innocence. She is then wrongfully placed inside of Arkham Asylum. At first, she does what she can to stay sane in the madhouse, but after 1 year and learning she won't be getting released, she finally snaps and becomes the very monster the asylum personnel assumed she was from the very beginning. The facility and staff finally breaking her. She may have been the daughter of a crime boss, but from what's in the show, I believe she was innocent of any crimes. Beyond maybe knowing the truth of what her father was. So she did not deserve to be placed inside of Arkham. So I wonder, just how many innocent people may have been placed in this asylum and then unfairly toyed with by the truly insane in their eyes. The very people meant to help them, only to be beaten down bit by bit, until the only sane thing to do in a house full of lunatics is to go insane just to survive. I think it goes without saying that this fake-out scene has big ogre vibes, because it has layers. My god, why did I write such a bad line? After taking 20 cc's of bullets straight to the brain, we awaken pulling ourselves out of a grave, the grave of Bruce Wayne. Surrounding us are feral Batmen locked behind electric gates, just like an insane inmate. They represent the paranoia, fear, and anxiety Batman keeps in check deep within himself. But the fear toxin is letting them bubble to the surface. There's also one outside of the cage eating a rat. I'm not sure what this symbolizes other than it's insane and super unhygienic. These Batmen are also not sporting his stylish cape, and there might be some deep symbolic meaning behind this, but honestly, I think it's just to make him look weird. We're so used to seeing the caped crusader in a cape, so it's a bit odd to see him when he's just out and about without it. Kinda like when you take the collar off of a dog. It's barely any change, but oh my, does the good boy look different. It's kinda like it's naked. And in a way, Batman looks more exposed when not donning the cape. It's a bit embarrassing. And as revenge for this embarrassment, we will take down Scarecrow for good.
I'll get you now.
Jonathan Crane, aka Scarecrow, first appeared in World's Finest Comics #3 in 1941, where he wore a hat, a Scarecrow costume, and wielded a gun. Not a fear toxin gun, just a good old-fashioned gun. I mean, yeah, if you want to scare someone, just shove a loaded firearm in their face, and they'll be scared alright. While he was a professor of psychology at the time, most of his more known elements, like the fear toxin, didn't appear until much later. But today, Scarecrow is known as the master of fear and chemistry. He's brought down Batman a few times through his debilitating concoctions, and at the time of the game, he got a popularity boost due to him being the main villain in Batman Begins. He is an outlet for writers to push one of Batman's most iconic elements forward, that being the sadness of losing his parents and the fear of letting them down. To me, however, Scarecrow has always been a bit of a lower tier villain because of his gimmick with the hallucinations he makes people see. Sure, he can make the average person fall prey to their fears, but after Batman has tussled with him once or twice, Batman knows not to trust what he sees when around him, as it would get real old to tell the same story of him seeing his dead parents over and over in the same comic or show run. That doesn't include his amazing characterization in Arkham Knight, but this isn't him. This is about the Asylum Scarecrow, and I really enjoy what they did with him. They used him to give Batman visions of his fears as expected. But instead of just making the villains look like monsters, they put a bit more pizzazz on it, making the world crumble around him in the 3 Scarecrow sections, forcing Batman to move through an environment he can't possibly tell what is real and what's not. Sure, they do introduce enemies Batman does see as skeletons as mentioned prior, but it's on top of all the other set dressing that makes this section a feast for the eyes. And at the end of each section, he needs to launch the bat symbol to fend off Scarecrow's fear toxin. It's like he's reminding himself who he is, what he stands for, and what needs to be done, thus allowing himself to claw his way out of his own darkness. This, however, is only something that can be done once in each iteration of Batman, so I'm glad Scarecrow wasn't personally present in Arkham City, and that they added a new layer to the fear toxin effects in Arkham Knight, where Batman has Joker running around his mind, and now the toxin has the effect of giving Joker more and more control over Batman's body. Though that section has its own separate issues I won't go into here. I mean, imagine if he showed up again in the sequel, and we had to overcome him by yet again remembering that we're Batman and we can stand against anything. It would feel real cheap. So they did good by getting that all out of the way in the first game and moving on from there. Having broken out of the toxin's effects, we come to holding Scarecrow by the throat, shocked by our ability to resist the amount of toxin that he's pumped into us. He jabs us once more to force us to release him, and he runs off. We can see that in our haze, we took down a number of goons and even a brute, a nice detail I honestly missed on my first playthrough. I just completely did not notice them there. Scarecrow's taken the elevator down into the sewer, where he plans to drop his toxin into the water running below the asylum, coating the entire area in fear gas. Boy, I hope he never succeeds in this kind of plan in the future, but on a wider scale. Can you imagine? He locks us out of the lower levels into the sewer, so we beat up a few more minions and hack open the elevator controls to clear our path forward. Falling down deeper, we finally enter the lair of Killer Croc, and it is immediately disgusting. The guards just keep hunks of raw butcher's meat kept in storage to feed Croc. Seems like Cash wasn't kidding when they tried to just forget about him and toss meat to him. He really has been treated like an animal, not a person, this whole time. He was never given a chance to get better with treatment like this. He's not an animal, but a man suffering from a physical and mental condition, but the asylum is just being used as another jail, or maybe it's more accurate to say as a zoo, keeping him in a place fit for a Croc, the sewers. And in these sewers, we finally catch up to Scarecrow, threatening to drop the fear toxin into the water, and thus making it impossible for us to get the plant that we need. Fortunately, Croc is not a big fan of farm equipment and grabs hold of Scarecrow, who conveniently drops the toxin on the ground. Batman tries to save him from Croc's grip by aiming at the shock collar, but the villain is pulled underwater. I'm sure we won't be seeing him again. Yep, no way. This scene isn't just a way to get rid of Scarecrow, but also a tutorial on Croc's weakness for the upcoming boss battle, his shock collar. One battering to it, and he falls right back into the water. Croc's now the only thing standing between Batman and the Venom plant roots. And boy, did he get a glow up, because this is what he looked like in the animated series. Waylon Jones, aka Killer Croc, made his first appearance in Detective Comics number 524 in 1983. Due to a genetic mutation, he suffers from a disorder that affects his physical appearance, giving him reptilian skin. And over the years in comic books, they've added reptilian eyes as well as enhanced strength, speed, senses, and healing to his list of powers. Growing up looking this way could not have been easy. After all,
children are cruel, Alfred.
So it's no wonder he isolated himself, living in the sewers where he probably felt he belonged. With looks like these, he was forced into a life of crime, and over the years, he became the very monster the people saw all along. He's a great, imposing villain with a sympathetic side when considering how his life must have been. The issue with Killer Croc in Arkham Asylum, and in many modern takes, is that he has become the DC's version of the Lizard. Originally, he just suffered from extreme atavism, a skin disorder that led him to acting like a croc due to him being treated as a monster. But today, more and more reptilian features have been tacked onto him, like a croc-like face and even a tail at times. What makes Killer Croc a more interesting villain in the Batman universe isn't his powers, but the fact that he's just a man suffering from an extreme genetic disorder that gives him really bad skin. He wasn't born a monster, but society turned him into one with how they treated him based on his looks. Another member of Batman's rogues gallery turned into a beast, a villain, due to the events outside of their control. But I'll give the game this, it wouldn't have been as much of a spectacle fight if Croc was just a slightly buffed up guy with scales, so I get the reasoning. But why did they have to give him a tail in Arkham Knight? Where did this come from? And don't give me that the stress he went through via torture affected his regeneration ability excuse, because that doesn't explain a sudden tail. With that explanation on Croc out of the way, it's time to get our hands on the Venom plant. Batman places a tracker down and some explosive gel on the floor for later. Always the planner, that Batman. And so we venture forth into the sewer. This is our Croc boss fight, where we need to walk as slowly as possible to avoid Croc detecting our location. All the while, we search for the plant roots with a distance meter to the side of the screen. Originally, this was my least favorite boss fight, as it just forces the player to walk super slow, and then occasionally throw a batarang at Croc if he pops up. But then I realized on my second playthrough that you can use the line gun to quickly move through the sewer without making any noise. Using a gadget like this to speed up the search while remaining undetected really makes you feel like you're solving a hidden puzzle. It may be my favorite boss battle now just for the fact that the developers allowed this to be done, but don't shove the fact you can use it like this into the player's face. It makes it go a whole lot faster too. More interesting boss designs like this, rather than brute fight after brute fight, would have gone a long way if the development team had more time. So we grab all of the plant goo and then make our way out of the sewer with Croc right on our tail. Fortunately, Batman prepared for just this event and detonates the explosive gel from earlier, sending Killer Croc careening down deeper into the depths of the sewers. I guess Batman just knows he'll be okay, cause who knows what's down there. Whatever, not the first time Batman's threw someone down an endless hole. With the plant samples in our possession, we leave the sewers, taking out a few more Joker goons on the way. We feel that Ivy's plants are growing even more out of control. Man, where's a gardener when you need one? Am I right? So we hurry our way into the Batcave to create an antidote to the Titan serum. The process is slow, but it'll work. Batman is able to create a little bit and then sets the Bat computer to synthesize more for later. Unfortunately, Ivy's plans don't like the idea as they reached deep into the depths of the island and they destroyed the Bat computer as they spread, leaving Batman with just the small antidote he was able to make. Make sure to avoid those tentacles, Batmans. I've seen enough anime to know where this is going, and you do not want to get caught by those. Before leaving the Batcave is here we get our final upgrade. Not counting the ones that can be purchased from the upgrade menu, that is. We get the new and improved Batclaw, allowing us to tear down weak walls from a distance. And with this now in our arsenal, I think it's time to talk about the Metroidvania aspects of this game. And in short, they're a bit underwhelming. Like any Metroidvania, we get new items and tools that allow us to access new areas or collect new collectibles. But with the game always constantly telling the player where to go next, and at times the new usage for a gadget only appearing due to a change in the environment that occurred off-screen, like with the mansion being covered in poison gas, it doesn't have the same punch as other Metroidvanias, where you will come across something impassable because you lack the needed items. So then you remember this area in your head for later use, and then maybe hours later you get an upgrade, and then finally it clicks. This is how you get through there to progress. The game doesn't tell you, hey, go here now that you have a new tool, or the game doesn't suddenly present a use for a tool that wasn't there originally. Arkham Asylum pulls this Metroidvania system better with the Riddler trophies, but it gets so tedious to go back through Arkham at the end with the final upgrades that it misses out on the charm of constantly seeing the world open up to you that other Metroidvanias have. Man, how many times can I say Metroidvanias, huh? I think Arkham Asylum would have accomplished this better if we were not constantly told where to go on the map or led by the hand with detective vision and had to explore and figure out where we can access through exploration and context clues in the story. For example, like in the Metroid series, in nearly every game, you're plopped on an alien planet and told to find your way through. No direction, just pure exploration. You run into different dead ends blocked by various hurdles, but as you find your way and collect items, you, the player, figure out what part of the worlds have just become accessible, and I love that. Or for another fan favorite example, think about Hollow Knight. Your only way of finding out where to go, or even where you are able to go, is through exploration, character dialogue, and the use of abilities you've acquired, and it's amazing! I'm not saying Arkham Asylum needed to be a full-blown Metroidvania. There I go, I said it again. But in the current state, it feels much too linear for the openness to explore that the gadgets tease at. Perhaps Rocksteady wanted to expand more on this idea, but like the boss battles, it was rightfully deemed to not be the top priority, and they just ran out of time to flesh it out. And looking at the sequels, I think Rocksteady learned from this game that the Metroidvania elements were not something to lean into for their following Arkham games, as it's not really present in City or Night. I'm glad they tried their hands at it, as it makes Asylum feel unique in this franchise. But I can't help but wish for that timeline where they were able to flesh out this element of the game. A full-fledged Batman Metroidvania sounds awesome. Maybe someday. Anyways, with the improved Batclaw in hand, we escape the now destroyed Batcave and need to glide through some rocky cliffs to make our way topside. And I gotta say, what are these rock pillars? Because they look bad, right? I haven't commented on the graphics up to this point because I think it looks pretty good, especially for its time. It's no Arkham Knight, but for the first Batman game, I think they killed it with the art style. The flashy menus that look like they came straight out of a comic book, the character designs, and the lighting all look amazing. But my god, these pillars look like they used the elevation tool from City Skylines. The textures are just so stretched. They aren't even really an obstacle. I barely had to change my gliding direction to avoid them. Maybe Rocksteady just felt they needed more rocky pillars for the atmosphere. But having noticed these, I kinda wish they were just left out. I don't think anybody would have complained that there wasn't enough rocky terrain on the side of the island if they were removed. They're just so bad that I find it kind of funny how they made it in. I don't have like a big section to connect this to, I just had to point them out when I noticed them. Breaking back into the ruins beneath Arkham, we see that Titan is now being poured into the water supply on the island, which could cause some real problems in and outside the asylum. So we need to find a way to destroy the pumping station feeding the Titan into the water. Also, take note of the roots now present in the old ruins. Just another instance of the insanity of the island breaking free and planting roots all throughout the madhouse, even deep below. Climbing our way up, busting down the breakable wall, and then sending a few goons down to their non-fatal fate. We enter the pumping station, where there are 3 pumps to hack and turn off. There's a stealth and combat section in front of them, but nothing really new, but still fun. 2 of the pumps are in one room, but my dumb gamer brain was thinking, 3 pumps? It must mean that there are 3 separate rooms, and I got really confused for a minute or two on where the 3rd room was, only to discover I completely overlooked the final pump in the same room as the 2nd. Good job, Rave. Turning off all 3 triggers the next goon rush plus a brute in the mixed boss battle. It's pretty much the same as the previous one. Knock down the brute and use them to deal damage to the surrounding henchmen and repeat. It's a fun time, but by this point a bit mindless, especially since the brutes just don't have the same satisfying crunch that fighting a horde of grunts alone has. Fighting just a bunch of minions really makes you feel like you're cracking skulls and breaking bones with acrobatic martial arts, while fighting a brute really makes you feel like you're just waiting for an opening and punching a brick wall made out of psycho meat until it collapses. The brutes just don't react to the hits the same satisfying way that the non-brute enemies do. With them all out of the way, we can finally ascend to the surface of the island and see that the entrance to the Joker Party building has nearly been complete. Throughout the game, the entrance was slowly being built up by his men, so it's nice to see some additional slow progression to the changes on the island due to the events transpiring. We walk through the asylum grounds back to the garden, avoiding snipers and bashing Crash Bandicoot plants along the way. And can I just mention how weird it is to just run as Batman? I may be the only one, but seeing Batman just jog around outside is so funny to me. Indoors it's fine, but in shows and TVs, you don't really see Batman just jogging like a normal guy for extended periods to his next destination. He's usually flipping, grappling, gliding, diving, sneaking, or just slowly walking to where he needs to go. But a jog is just so weird to me. Like, imagine if Darth Vader in Star Wars was just seen running. Not super fast, just a normal run instead of his signature menacing walk. It would be real funny to see that, and that's what this is to me. Let me know in the comments if you think the same. In Arkham City and Night, they avoided this with the implementation of the grapple launch, so there's a lot less jogging in that game. Re-entering the gardens, Ivy beckons us with a suggestive tentacle leading us straight to her lair. Following it, we find she has brainwashed some of the guards, so we take them out. Not in a more gentle manner or anything, so these guys are gonna feel real sore when they wake up. With them out of the way, Ivy is not too far away now. Pamela Lillian Isley, aka Poison Ivy, first debuted in Batman number 181 in 1966. Originally, she was just a woman that became immune to toxins and diseases due to an ancient Egyptian herb and wore lipstick that could control men. So she wasn't some half-plant person that can control foliage. But over the years, she developed into a mutated scientist or an eco-terrorist granted powers over plants via science gone wrong. She is one of the most powerful members of Batman's rogues gallery, yet still complex. She is written at her best when she's not concerned with the desires of humans, like money or material possessions. Instead, it is best when she is someone who takes action to push for the safety and at times domination of plant life over animals. This can lead her to be a villain in some stories, or a reluctant hero in others. She's also known for her manipulation of men as a seductress, and thanks to her powerful pheromones, she can even overtake the likes of Superman at times. And plant powers are great and all, but why take what you need by force when you can seduce foes into cooperating? Sexuality is ingrained in her character most of the time, but it's merely another tool for her to control the humans she sees herself above. And yeah, I think Rocksteady nailed this part of her character for sure. Really, they nailed all of her character. She only wants out of the cell to comfort the plants, helps Batman only out of a fear of what may be done to the plants, and finally embraces the Titan compound, not as a lust for power itself, but as a means to have plant life regain control over Gotham. She is explored even better in Arkham Knight, and I think she's one of the best characters in that game, so it's clear Rocksteady knew what they were doing when it came to Poison Ivy. And as much as I love her characterization here, we still gotta take her down. We enter where Ivy is holed up and try to administer the antidote to cure Ivy of Titan, but she's not having it. She likes the power and what it means for plant kind. She and her plants have never been so powerful, so she wants to stay that way, and wait a second, where's that tentacle going? Oh, never mind. Demonetization avoided. She then summons a giant killer plant that roars like a T-Rex for some reason. I did not edit that, it literally just roared. Introducing the Hive Mind boss fight from Dead Space, y'all. I can't be the only one that sees this, right? Giant tentacle monster that shoots some projectiles and it forces you to strafe left and right to avoid sweep attacks. Just me? Okay. The spectacle of this fight is great, but the fight itself is kind of meh. You can slowly just walk left and right to avoid her spore attacks, and then batarang her when she's open. And the vine attacks are also just super easy to avoid. When you knock down the HP bar, you then use explosive gel to weaken Ivy's protective coating. But once isn't enough times, which is what leads into Phase 2. And in this phase, she summons minions, but that's about it for changes. It's a pretty straightforward fight that I wish just had a bit more to it. There's just something about giant bosses that barely attack that rubs me the wrong way in games. You've got this hulking behemoth in front of you, and instead of it coming at you full force, it slowly sweeps the area or just tries to take pot shots, or sends smaller enemies to take you out. It's always a bit underwhelming for me, and this boss was no different. I will say though that Ivy's voice actress, Tasia Valenza, was giving it her all in the recording booth. I bet it was a fun day in the recording studio that day. I don't know why in games a woman's in-pain noise equals sexy moans. I'm not complaining, just making an observation. It kind of reminds me of the noises that the female character in Dark Souls will make when they're hit. We take down Ivy and she disappears into the dark void, and we get the bat out of there and land conveniently next to a Riddler trophy. Nice. We see fireworks in the sky signaling us where to go next, as it seems that Joker has finally finished preparing for his big party, and we are invited. After hours in the asylum, constant changes to the island, and even the slow deterioration of Batman's suit as the night progressed, it is finally time to face down the Mad Clown. The Joker first appeared in Batman #1 in 1940. He looked like the Joker we all are used to, using deadly smile gas and wielding a gun.
For his neutral special, he wields a gun.
But as the years would go on, he would grow more and more psychotic in the pages of comics, going bigger and bigger with the horrifying acts he would commit. He is the Batman villain everyone knows, and for a good reason, as he has had countless incarnations in comics, TV, movies, and games. He's been everything from a violent, silly guy in the Adam West Batman show, to the crazy mobster in 1989's Batman movie, a deranged madman that just wants to watch the world burn in the Dark Knight, and even a partial victim of circumstance and untreated mental illness in 2019's Joker. He's still a bad guy in that though, just a somewhat more sympathetic take. Don't lump me in with those guys who think that he was a good guy in that film. Thank you. The Joker is one of the most interesting villains due to the way that many writers can take him, and in Arkham Asylum, they did pretty good. We are a ways off on the great characterization done in Arkham City and Knight, but this game set the groundwork, where the focus is on the relationship between Joker and Batman. Batman won't kill the Joker, and Joker won't really kill Batman, not until he has broken him first. He wants to bring him down to his level, and that's what this whole night has been leading up to. All the planning, all the scheming, it's all been just for Batsy right here. The only thing I wish they could have done more of was have the Joker be a bit more present in Batman's ear. Not exactly like how it is in Arkham Knight, but similar to Handsome Jack in Borderlands 2 or Shodan in System Shock. In those games, they are constantly sending voice messages to the player, telling them how it's pointless to try and stop them. They give progress updates, insult the player, and always make it seem like they are always just ahead of the curve. He already does this from time to time, but it's just to give the vague threat or the "you'll never stop me, bats" spiel. I want him nagging the Batman, give him updates on the party setup, tell me who's gonna make it to the festivities and who's not. Really make me feel like I'm the only one that Joker is thinking about this whole night. Because it's not until the very end, when all the fireworks are in the sky, that it really feels like Joker is having a ball of a time and just cannot wait for his VIP to finally show. And show we shall, as we make our way over to the party entrance. Outside, we see some goons waiting with presents and party hats. A bouncer stops us from entering because he's got to check the list, going down it line by line looking for Batman when it's plastered boldly across the page. Great bit, goon, +2. It turns out that we're the guest of honor, and this one guy's voice actor is just loving it. I'm not sure what he means by do it, but I love the energy he's bringing. He's just happy to have made it through the night without getting knocked out. I was so happy with their cheers that I left them all unharmed as I entered the building, and what a surprise, even more fanfare inside. All the henchmen decked out in party hats and cheering me on. I think you can fight them here, but they just seem so happy that I can never bring myself to start a fight here. It would be bad manners for the guest of honor anyways. Entering the visitor room, we are forced into a first-person perspective, and Joker's got a little surprise for us.
Surprise! Everyone always said I should be in television. You don't want to miss this, really.
Now that's what I call showmanship. Now let's start this party off with a bang.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Batman survives the explosion that he could have easily avoided and walks to confront Joker once and for all. Joker's playing with the puppet Scarface while sitting on a throne made of mannequins as we approach. He's also guarded by 2 transformed Arkham guards that are currently being kept on a leash. Well, that is until he releases both of them. We make short work of them as a combination of the double brute fight in the secret lab with some added goons in the mix. It's always fun to see the brutes bash down the goons, so it's a fun start to the party, if not a bit overdone by this point in the game. We did such a good job taking down the enemies that Joker rewards us with a prize, our good friend, Commissioner Gordon. I guess he was captured on his way back to the mainland, or maybe the transportation was on Joker's payroll. I don't really know, it's not really fully explained, but you can infer that he was recaptured on the boat one way or the other, since the 2 brutes we took down were also on the boat originally that Gordon took. But they were just normal security guards at that time, they weren't brutes just yet. Joker then tries to shoot Gordon full of Titan, but Batman takes the bullet for him. He then just somehow resists the transformation, like, I don't know how he's doing it, but he is. Overcoming Scarecrow's fear toxin that is a mental attack is one thing, but resisting a physical change from a chemical is a bit out there. I know he's Batman, but it's a little extreme right here when there is no good reason for this. It's like if someone going into surgery just resisted the gas that knocks you out. Trust me, you can try all you want, but 10 seconds after inhaling that stuff, you'll be knocked out and you'll be waking up a few hours later with 2 fewer tonsils. Joker is just as confused and upset as I am, so he tries to break the OP Batman concentration that is resisting the biochemical change to his DNA by tickling him with a feather. Unsolicited tickling is never okay, so Batman tells him to shove off. Joker then says my favorite line in the entire game that sums up why he did all of this in the first place.
I just wanted to bring down your grim facade and for once let you see the world as I see it, giggling in a corner and bleeding.
And then he shoots himself full of Titan. And boom, boss battle time.
Let's get ready to tango!
I did not edit this at all. It literally goes from Joker injecting himself to Joker suddenly being Titan boosted and teleporting me, Joker, and Gordon to the roof. All while Joker is completely immune to damage and unable to move. This is some kind of glitch in the Game of the Year edition on Steam and has happened every time I play this game. It always requires me to restart from a checkpoint, so that's fun. But it did give me a chance to take a closer look at Titan Joker's model. I always thought he grew claws, but those are just really, really long finger bones. He's also way taller than I thought when up close like this. Batman only makes it up to his knees, so he's probably a bit under 30 feet tall, I'd bet. Beefy stuff. That's enough admiring Joker's gains, let's restart. We left off with Joker injecting himself and then it cuts to black, only to return with Gotham's #2 reporter, Jack Ryder, reporting on the events of Arkham Island. Seems Joker sent a recording to the reporter a few minutes ago telling him what was going on and to show up to witness the fall of the Dark Knight. Joker then emerges from the roof, carrying Batman, who I remind you, is still somehow resisting the change of Titan. Joker has a sick mohawk and his ribs are poking out through his chest, unable to be contained due to the transformation. He chucks Batman down into an arena for a fight and reveals that Commissioner Gordon is up here too. Somehow. Seriously, how did he get up here? We needed Joker to carry us up here. Who got him up here before us? No, really, I am super confused. This ending is a bit rushed in places, I think. Joker then goads us into transforming as it's the only way we stand a chance against him. He wants Batman to finally embrace his crazy side, meet Joker on his level. If he does, it'll make this whole night worth it. But Batman refuses and he finally uses the antidote. Why didn't he just use that earlier? I've got no idea. It's not like he was saving it for Titan Joker, since when he was first injected, he had no idea of knowing that this was going to happen. Again, I think they ran out of time a bit when setting up this ending, because it's playing fast and loose again. With Joker's night completely ruined, it seems he will have to settle for breaking the Bat down in front of all of Gotham watching. So it's time for the Batman v Titan Joker boss fight. And by that, I mean we run away from Joker, fight some minions as he poses for the camera crew, and then we pull him off of the stage, only to get his gross fingers stuck, and we beat him up. And then repeat this 3 times in total. And can I just say, it's bad enough that Rocksteady made the Joker final boss fight another Titan fight that kinda goes against what makes Joker special, but they don't even really make it a fight against the Joker. He spends more time showboating than he does spend trying to hurt us. The boss fight is like 90% fighting the same goons that we've been clobbering and destroying the occasional exploding teeth Joker throws down. I would have preferred some other form of final boss encounter that's more suited to the Joker, but if you're gonna roid out the J-Man, at least let me punch him in his crazy face. I'm sure I'm not the only one that expected something different for a final confrontation against Joker, since the Joker's physical might is not really one of the first things anyone thinks of when it comes to the Joker. I mean, look at him, he's a string bean. It's like if the Onceler fell into a vat of acid, and thus created a whole new side of Tumblr, claiming that the Joker is the new Tumblr sexy man. Perhaps fighting goons while needed to locate devices that'll shoot Titan-filled rockets into the city and needing to hack them in precise order could have worked, or maybe with some neat platforming thrown in could have enhanced the fight a bit too. But then it would have relied on the lackluster sequencer segment, so maybe not. I just know that going into this fight, I was not expecting, nor really wanting a fist fight with the Joker, but with the severe lack of fisting the Joker in the face. After knocking down Joker 3 times and bruising his face, we finish the fight with an explosive gel-laced punch that finally knocks Joker out. We free Commissioner Gordon, the GCPD regains control of the island, locking up the inmates and supercriminals, and it turns out the Titan transformation is temporary. Batman then returns home and uses all the information he's gathered to expose the corruption in Gotham, exposing Sharp for his negligence, and he pulls his funding he gave as Bruce Wayne until the asylum is restructured into a place that can actually do good for his community and those that are suffering in its walls. Except that's not what he does at all. After all the horrors he faced, all the examples of cruel torture and mistreatment he saw with his own eyes, and the deep-seated corruption exposed over the course of the night, he does nothing. It seems as though a huge point of this game was that everything in the asylum was rotten, not just those that were incarcerated, but those running it and treating its people as well. A place more focused on profits, ratings, and political leverage rather than on bettering those entrusted to it for the sake of Gotham City. Batman at his core is not just a hero that beats up the bad guys and gets them locked away, never to be thought about again. Deep down, he cares about the mental well-being of these criminals. Some of them were even his friends before tragedy struck them. Not to mention that he needs there to be a way for these criminals to be healed, because if they can't, then what is he fighting for? What hope does he have of bettering his city, if the criminals truly are a lost cause? So it just confuses me how he can just leave, respond to an alert that Two-Face is robbing a bank, and then, in all likelihood, capture him only to send him off to the asylum he just exposed as a corrupt institution. Two-Face, who I might add, was a close ally and friend when he was merely Harvey Dent. This game obviously leads into the game Arkham City, and early on we see Bruce Wayne campaigning against this expansion of the asylum, and it's clear Rocksteady has some plans for this potential sequel via the secret room in the mansion. But there's no mention to Gordon, the one cop he can trust, about the fact that Arkham needs to be investigated? Just a line or two at the very end to really drive the point home that the monster that is Arkham Asylum is being run by insane men itself? One scene like that would have further elevated the whole experience for me. But alas, it's another missed opportunity. Instead, he just rushes off into the Batwing to catch Two-Face. Then, in the secret ending, Croc emerges grabbing onto a crate of Titan, which I don't think has any real bearing on the sequels. Scarecrow uses it as a flotation device after being injured by Croc, but beyond that, I cannot think or find any way that this crate was used later on. Please let me know in the comments if I missed something about it. All in all, I think at the time of release, Arkham Asylum was the greatest Batman game ever made that felt like a true Batman experience for fans. Some people may enjoy the Lego game more, but that has a completely different feel, and comparing the two is like comparing apples and oranges. And apples are absolutely better than oranges though. Apple Gang, rise up. In my opinion, Arkham Asylum is the worst in the main Arkham games, and no, we're not counting Suicide Squad in that group, it doesn't deserve that honor. But it's only the worst in the series because of how well it set the groundwork for the Arkham formula and how well Rocksteady and WB Montreal for Origins used that formula going forward. You could say that this game walked so that the sequels could run. The game is an amazing experience that every Batman fan should play, and it really accomplished what Rocksteady set out to do. It really does make you feel like Batman. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching till the end. I just want to say that this was my first real video essay retrospective critique thing on a game that I love. I would really appreciate any feedback down in the comments or even game recommendations on what to explore next or in the future. I'm thinking of doing Half-Life or Dark Souls or Dead Space and of course the other Arkham games too. But I'd love to hear from y'all too. Oh yeah, and like and subscribe and all that. And until next time, stay awesome, y'all.